How does Bitcoin work, and why is it valuable? Bitcoin is the first global infrastructure that enables sending and receiving value anywhere in the world, without relying on intermediaries like banks or payment processors. With just a smartphone or computer and an internet connection, anyone can use it. Before Bitcoin, the only way to exchange value remotely was through a central authority or institution. Trusting a bank or financial institution was necessary to process transactions between individuals. But Bitcoin changes everything. With Bitcoin, there's no need to trust a single intermediary to conduct digital transactions. Instead, the network operates through a decentralized system of participants, ensuring security and transparency. Anyone can have a Bitcoin wallet, receive Bitcoin without cost, and send it by paying the network fees at the time of the transaction. The Bitcoin network is powered by many thousands of nodes distributed around the world. These nodes range from personal computers and corporate servers to small devices like Raspberry Pi. Running a Bitcoin node at home is affordable. It costs around $100 to set up a node and consumes very little electricity. This diversity of devices running nodes highlights the accessibility of the network, as anyone with basic hardware can participate in maintaining and securing the Bitcoin ecosystem. And the software to operate a node is open source and freely available. Each of these nodes stores a complete, independently verified copy of Bitcoin's entire transaction history, ensuring that the network operates with a unified and consistent ledger. This shared ledger, distributed across many thousands of geographically dispersed and independently operated nodes, makes altering the record virtually impossible. This immutable record is called the blockchain. You've probably heard the term blockchain before, but what exactly is it and how does each block function? Each block in the blockchain contains a few key elements: the hash of the previous block, which links it to the chain, the nodes, a unique random number crucial for the mining process, and a selection of transactions submitted by network users during that period. These components work together to ensure the block's validity and its connection to the blockchain. But how are blocks solved and added to the blockchain? Blocks are added to the blockchain through a process known as mining. But don't worry, this doesn't involve picks or shovels. Mining is a computational process. While all miners operate through nodes, not all nodes are miners. Only mining nodes compete against each other to solve the next block and add it to the chain. To solve a block, each miner concatenates all of its data and performs a hashing operation on the sequence. A hash is a type of operation, similar to addition or subtraction, that produces a random result depending on the input used. In order to solve a block, the resulting hash must begin with a specific number of zeros, as determined by the network's difficulty level at that moment. For example, to solve this block, a hash must start with 2 zeros. Miners test different combinations of data sequences to find a hash that meets the network's conditions. This is typically done by changing the nonce, but miners can also reorder transactions, alter metadata, and so on. In this example, the miner is changing the nonce value 0, 1, 2, 3 until it finds a valid hash that meets the network requirements. As we can see, we found a valid hash that matches the difficulty adjustment with the nonce 3. This is the hash that gets included in the header of the next block, and all nodes can verify its validity by performing the operation themselves. The difficulty of the Bitcoin network adjusts every 2 weeks to ensure blocks are added at an average rate of 10 minutes. This adjustment is vital for keeping the network balanced, making sure Bitcoin's supply remains predictable and stable, even if the number of miners fluctuates. By keeping the block time consistent, the network avoids speeding up or slowing down unexpectedly. The difficulty adjustment involves increasing or decreasing the number of zeros required at the beginning of a hash for a block to be considered valid by the network. This process ensures that the time it takes to mine a block remains consistent, regardless of changes in overall mining power. The miner who solves the block is rewarded with a set amount of Bitcoin. This amount is halved approximately every 4 years, an event known as the halving. But this amount is not the only thing the miner receives each time they solve a block. They also receive the sum of the transaction fees from all the transactions included in that block. The block mining reward will come to an end after the year 2100, but this doesn't mean that miners won't be able to continue operating. By that time, they will only receive transaction fees as a reward for solving the block. The mining industry will adapt to this new reality, with miners relying solely on these fees. And it's expected that the network will be more efficient and self-sustaining as the supply of Bitcoin becomes fixed. Mining nodes execute millions of hashes per second. In the early days, it was possible to mine using CPUs, even with laptops. Later, miners transitioned to using graphics cards, GPUs. And today, the majority of mining is done with specialized hardware known as ASICs, application-specific integrated circuits. Over the past few years, Bitcoin mining has been stigmatized in the press and conventional media, often portrayed as a source of harmful pollution to the planet. But is this really true? The reality is that Bitcoin mining acts as a flexible, off-grid, and last-resort energy consumer. Many facilities produce more energy than they consume, especially during periods of low demand. This surplus, which would typically go to waste, can be absorbed by Bitcoin miners. A clear example of this is wind energy at night. The same happens with solar energy, which tends to generate excess power on sunny days. Mining is ideal for absorbing intermittent energy from renewable sources during peak generation times, but it's not just useful for renewable sources. It can also be used with natural gas from venting or flaring on oil rigs, which would otherwise simply be burned. In Texas, some miners participate in demand response programs for cities. When the electricity grid needs to free up capacity for other consumers, miners shut down, helping stabilize the grid. On the other hand, when demand is low, miners operate at full capacity. Another advantage is that miners can shut down in a matter of seconds, quickly stabilizing the grid. Many people think it's too late to enter Bitcoin, but is that really the case? There are 8 billion people in the world, and only 21 million Bitcoins. 1 million will be mined by 2040. Another million remains in the wallet of its vanished creator, Satoshi Nakamoto. 3 million are presumed lost. Another 3 million are officially in the hands of governments and institutions, and the rest are held by network users and on exchange platforms. Assuming 75% of the population adopts Bitcoin, it could be estimated that each person would receive around 100,000 Satoshis on average. Conventional media have long suggested that governments might ban Bitcoin, viewing it as a threat to the traditional financial system. However, today the reality is quite different. Some governments are discreetly purchasing Bitcoin, accumulating it as part of their strategic reserves. This reflects an acknowledgement of its long-term value and its potential as a safe haven asset in an increasingly uncertain economic world. Another common fear related to Bitcoin is that a quantum computer might break its cryptography. However, this isn't exclusive to Bitcoin. It could also compromise the encryption protecting nuclear codes, banking systems, and online security. Moreover, solutions already exist. Quantum-resistant cryptography is currently under investigation, and if necessary, Bitcoin could be updated through a fork to create a new version of the network, incorporating this enhanced security. In the event of a chain split, your Bitcoin balance on the new chain would reflect the same amount as on the original chain. This ensures that you don't lose access to your funds, regardless of which chain, the original or the new one, proves more successful in the long run. As a result, there is no risk of losing value. Your funds would be protected. Even if the main chain changes in the future, your accumulated Bitcoins would remain secure. If a fork were to occur, the support of the majority of ecosystem participants would be required for the new chain to become the primary one. While it's impossible to predict how the network would react, it is expected that the more secure chain would ultimately prevail. In recent years, we've observed how home prices have risen drastically in dollars, but have decreased when measured in Bitcoin. The same trend applies to the cost of groceries and other basic goods. This highlights an important point. The issue isn't solely the price of products, but the depreciation of money itself. The value of Bitcoin lies in its scarcity, with only 21 million available. It's also a global infrastructure, a neutral network free from institutional influence. Bitcoin protects your savings, labor, and effort from the devaluation of fiat currencies. The current financial system benefits from the Cantillon effect, where those with early access to newly created money, such as banks, corporations, and governments, become wealthier by spending it before it loses value. Meanwhile, most of the population, who receive it later, suffers the consequences of inflation and rising living costs. The most concerning thing is that the money supply will continue to grow. The current system relies on printing money to function, and it will only change when we adopt alternatives like Bitcoin, which are inflation-resistant and protect people's purchasing power in the long term. Bitcoin is the closest thing we've had to true freedom. It's an unconfiscable asset that serves as a refuge against the constant devaluation of our efforts and work. It's a tool for holding institutions accountable and balancing global energy generation and consumption. Bitcoin is not just a technology, it's a silent revolution, a unique opportunity for people to regain control, the world to find a fair balance. It's the spark of a change that can no longer be stopped.